Good afternoon and welcome to VHHA's Annual General Assembly Review webinar. I'm Julie Dime, Vice President of Government Affairs, and I'm thrilled to be here with my esteemed colleague, Brent Rawlings, VHHA's Senior Vice President and General Counsel. Just a quick housekeeping note, we are recording this webinar and we'll be sharing the slides with you after the presentation, so no need to worry about taking copious notes. Today, we will provide insights and practical guidance to navigate the upcoming code changes seamlessly. We'll start with a brief yet comprehensive recap of the 2025 General Assembly session, setting the stage for our deeper dive into the new laws to take effect on July 1. These changes have implications for the hospital and healthcare industry, and we'll be breaking down exactly what you need to know. Brent and I will turn off our cameras as we go through the presentation. However, our email address are included in the final slide, and we welcome you to contact us afterward if you have any questions. You're also feel free to put questions in the chat, and if it's at the end, if we haven't gone over our hour, we'll certainly try to answer and get to all those, and if we do not, we will certainly follow up with you individually. So Tori is helping us today, and she's going to be advancing our slides. So Tori, if I could have you advance to our first slide. Wonderful, thank you. So here's our agenda for today. We are going to go have a brief overview of our session, and then we'll go into all the new laws. We'll talk a little bit about the budget. We'll have a brief elections preview, and then if we can, we'll certainly take your questions. So next slide, please. All right. The 2025 General Assembly formally adjourned sine die on February 22nd, making the end of a highly active and consequential legislative session. Over the course of the session, more than 3,000 pieces of legislation were introduced, and nearly 2,000 of those, 1,988 to be exact, successfully passed both chambers of the General Assembly. Following adjournment, the governor exercised his executive authority by issuing 157 vetoes and amending 159 pieces of legislation. Notably, the General Assembly upheld all 157 of the governor's vetoes, reflecting the current political dynamics and the strength of the executive influence during the session's final stretch. From VHHA's perspective, this session yielded significant positive outcomes. We achieved success on several of our top legislative priorities, and we're effective in helping defeat proposals that would have negatively impacted hospitals and healthcare delivery in Virginia. These victories are a testament to our continued advocacy, our strong engagement with policymakers throughout the session. Looking ahead, it's important to note that all 100 seats in the Virginia House of Delegates will be up for re-election this year, a development that will undoubtedly shape the legislative landscape moving forward. Additionally, a possible special session is being discussed for the week of September 8th, which may be necessary depending on fiscal or policy developments out of the federal level. Finally, the 2026 General Assembly session is scheduled to convene on Wednesday, January 14th, and we're already preparing. VHHA will remain actively engaged through the interim to prepare for the year ahead to ensure that our advocacy remains aligned with the evolving priorities of our members and the Commonwealth. So next slide is here. We're going to get into it, and I'm going to toss it over to my colleague, Brent.
Thank you, Jolie, and good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining us. Folks, I'm going to move really quick through this, so buckle up. We've got a lot of slides to go through. Really just going to give you a high-level overview of legislation of particular importance to hospitals and folks in your operations. We'll have backup materials for all of this coming to you once the governor is finished with his final action. So just bear with me as we work through this quickly. We're going to gloss over some things, but at the end of it, hopefully you'll have a good picture of everything that we'll be dealing with over the next coming year as these are implemented. Beginning with Certificate of Public Need. Diving right in here, a handful of bills this year, including one to implement a phased deregulation of COPN with a complete repeal by 2027. Thankfully, that was defeated. What did pass was very measured relative to that proposal, starting with this bill here, House Bill 2119 and its Senate companion instructs the State Health Services Plan Task Force to develop recommendations for establishing expedited review for various projects located in medical deserts. You're probably asking, what is a medical desert? We've done a little bit of analysis on that, but it's basically an area where there is no hospital, a sparsely populated area or impoverished area. Based on the way the legislation is drafted in our preliminary analysis, we see 7 localities that are potentially medical deserts: Dickinson, Buena Vista, Buchanan, Martinsville City, Galax City, Bath, and Bedford County. So it's still unclear exactly what the scope of this will be. The task force is already beginning to look at this, so more to come on that as we have additional details. Another COPM bill, Senate Bill 1064, implemented consensus recommendations of the State Health Services Plan Task Force to move various psychiatric services projects to expedited review. Specifically, it allows expedited review for addition of greater of 10 or 10% of beds at an existing psych facility within a 2-year period, allows a relocation of beds from one existing psych facility to another psych facility in the same planning district, and allows the development of a new psych service facility by an existing psychiatric facility also within the same planning district. Action required, just evaluate availability of expedited review for projects for psychiatric services going forward. Moving on to behavioral health, House Bill 1895 and its Senate companion clarifies the definition of psychiatric emergency department to reflect current practice. This was legislation that was requested by VHHA and developed by our Behavioral Health Executive Steering Committee. The goal really was to just clarify a path for further development of psychiatric emergency departments in the Commonwealth. Action required, evaluate the application of this definition to psychiatric emergency departments for future projects. Next, another behavioral health bill, also at the request of VHHA, House Bill 1937 and Senate companion, to create a bed registry advisory council to oversee privacy and data security protections of the state acute psychiatric bed registry used for TDO patients. This recognizes that as participation in the bed registry is mandated, there's a need to ensure that information in that system is not misused. So it puts in place this advisory council similar to different data sets that exist in the state today, such as the all payer claims database. Action required, just to kind of think about this, evaluate the need for additional measures that might be needed for privacy and security of information reported to the bed registry, and take that, and we can use that to inform the advisory council going forward. Next slide. Shifting gears to insurance. Another piece of VHHA-backed legislation. This was to put into state law rules to ensure fair business practices surrounding insurer prior authorization requirements. It's intended to be in line with new prior authorization requirements coming into place at the federal level. House Bill 2099 and the Senate companion includes time limits for processing prior auth requests, prohibits revoking or limiting or conditioning a prior auth retrospectively, requires the insurer to provide the reasons for any denial, and then implements data reporting and transparency requirements for insurer prior authorization practices. Action required, evaluate implementation of the policies and procedures of policies and procedures that are in place today to monitor carrier compliance with the new law. And then please encourage your folks to participate in the VHHA Payer Advisory Committee and its engagement with the Bureau of Insurance work group that will be involved in implementing the law. Next, we have another prior authorization bill, House Bill 2525. This is just a continuation of work in previous sessions to implement electronic prior authorizations for prescription drugs. Similarly here, action required, evaluate implementation of policies and procedures to monitor carrier compliance, and again, participate in the PAC engagement with the BOI work group on this matter. As always, there are a number of bills to modify regulations affecting hospitals, beginning with this one, House Bill 2742, addressing the fentanyl crisis. It requires hospitals with an emergency department when conducting urine drug screening to include testing for fentanyl in the urine drug screening. This does not require a drug screening for all patients. This requirement only applies when ordered by the physician to assist in diagnosing a patient's condition. Also note that the law has a delayed effective date of January 1, 26. So action required here, evaluate your capabilities to include testing for fentanyl in urine drug screening and any changes to protocols, order sets, or lab operations or related policies and procedures as necessary to comply with the law by January 1, 26. In a rare example of relieving regulation on hospitals, VHHA requested this bill to provide critical access hospitals with additional flexibility to use swing beds. Existing law limited swing bed use to 10 beds, which was a carryover from federal requirements that have since been removed. House Bill 1552 in the Senate companion essentially allows a critical access hospital to use up to 15 beds as swing beds, so long as it does not exceed 10 beds on average over a fiscal year period. This was a result of a compromise language with the nursing homes who expressed some concerns with having unfettered use of swing beds. So hopefully this will strike the right balance. Action required, evaluate any changes to policies and procedures for use of swing beds as permitted by and in compliance with the law. Another hospital regulatory matter, skipped one here. Yes, there we go. Hospital nursing home licensing fees. This one essentially just removed an existing cap on licensure fees that were implemented decades ago. Gives the Board of Health the authority to raise fees and adjust them over time within certain guardrails specified in the law. All of that would have to be done through the regulatory process. So action required here just to begin thinking about and preparing for possible increases in licensure fees for those entities licensed by the department. Next slide here, beginning a couple of bills that are part of what was referred to as the Momnibus package during General Assembly session, an effort to address maternal health needs across the state. This bill, House Bill 2753, and its Senate companion, requires hospitals and freestanding emergency departments and birthing centers to implement standardized protocols for identifying and responding to obstetric emergencies based on protocols developed by the Virginia Neonatal Perinatal Collaborative. So these protocols have yet to be developed. That will be ongoing work. And so as those protocols are developed, action required here is to stay informed and begin preparing for future adoption of their implementation. Obviously, more to come on that one. Another maternal health related bill, Senate Bill 1384, requires healthcare facilities that provide labor and childbirth services to adopt policies that primarily allow a companion or doula to be present during birth, in addition to a partner or spouse, unless otherwise indicated by the treating physician, as well as implementing some other practices related to the delivery and postpartum process to include doulas and other support persons. So action required here is just to think about and evaluate the need for any changes to existing policies and procedures related to doula or other support person access as part of the birth and postpartum process. These next two pieces of legislation here on sexual assault services, these were again at the request of VHHA. There was legislation passed in 2020 that required hospitals and other providers to put in place plans to treat or transfer sexual assault patients. While certainly well intended, there were some implementation challenges with the laws. Some of you may be familiar with that if you've had to do some work in this area. So VHHA requested this legislation really to just clarify and streamline application of the law. Further detail is provided here. Won't belabor that, but action required is to evaluate the need for any changes to your existing policies and procedures for sexual assault transfer treatment and related plans as necessary to comply with the law. And then next, as a companion to this legislation I just mentioned, House Bill 2088 and its Senate companion, also requested by VHHA, seeking to expand access to forensic nursing services through telehealth consultation with a forensic examiner. So that will helpfully address some of the access issues with sexual assault services. The law further establishes that the PERT kit collected through the telehealth exam shall have the same weight in evidence as one done directly by a forensic examiner. There's also a work group involved in this. There'll still be more ongoing work around expanding access to these services. So action required here is begin thinking about evaluating capabilities to conduct telehealth sexual assault forensic examinations as an alternative to in-person. Next, moving to a couple of pharmacy-related items. House Bill 2392 and its Senate companion was requested by VHHA to extend to hospitals existing protections under law that prevent harmful practices by PBMs that allow them to would otherwise allow them to prevent or curtail access to 340B pharmacies. Action required here is just to evaluate implementation of policy and procedures to monitor pharmacy benefit manager compliance with the law. So again, this is existing law. This very subtle change to the law expands those existing protections to cover 340B hospital pharmacies. And then next, another pharmacy bill, House Bill 1905 and its companion. This effectively codifies a waiver of state pharmacy laws that during the Baxter-Helene saline crisis limited the ability to do some compounding that would have really helped. So this change just clarifies under the law that distribution of compounded drugs is permitted within health systems where under common ownership and administered to the patients of that hospital or health system. So action required here is evaluate the implementation of policies and procedures to permit expanded use of compounded drugs within your health system. And next, workplace violence in response to the ever-present concerns about acts of violence against healthcare workers. VHHA, along with the Medical Society of Virginia, Virginia Nurses Association, and Virginia College of Emergency Physicians, worked on this legislation, taking a first step towards improving workplace violence reporting systems and data collection across the Commonwealth. Really a continuation of great work that's already underway by you all as part of the VHHA Workplace Violence Reporting Task Force. Many of your organizations are involved in that. And so this will help to further that good work already underway, as I said. Action required here, evaluate the need for any changes to your workplace violence incident reporting system, policies and procedures as necessary to comply with the law. And begin assessing capabilities to accommodate the annual reporting that's included under the law. More to come on that one. And in labor employment, moving to one labor issue, just to note out, Senate Bill 1218 made a minor change to the existing prohibition against non-competes for low-wage workers. This effectively clarifies that employees who qualify for overtime pay under the Fair Labor Standards Act are included in the existing prohibition under the law. Action required here is to assess whether or not you have entered or have plans to enter into a non-compete with an individual that would be entitled to overtime compensation. This is effective July 1, 2025 going forward. And if you have any existing contract not to compete, think about whether it should be renewed prior to that deadline, and just evaluate the need for changes to policy and procedures around covenant not to compete as it affects any of these employees that qualify for overtime pay. Moving on to health professions, the General Assembly passed Senate Bill 882 to allow for the licensure and practice of certified anesthesiologist assistants in Virginia as an alternative to CRNAs. So some good news here on the workforce front. Action required, begin thinking about and evaluate the need for possible changes to your medical staff bylaws and clinical privileging documents and related policies and procedures to allow the future performance of services by anesthesiologist assistants in your operations. Next, a couple of legal issues to raise up with you. House Bill 1629. This is minor measure that really just modifies existing law around attorney requests for medical records. This modifies the rule to require provision of care, require provision of one free copy of the medical record request where the request is made for purposes of appealing a Social Security Act or similar needs-based program benefit determination. So action required here, evaluate the need for changes to policies and procedures regarding requests for medical records as necessary to comply with the law. Another legal issue here. There was activity this year around medical malpractice damages cap. Fortunately, that was defeated. This smaller measure here, though, does affect medical malpractice. It really just clarifies court rules surrounding expert witness certifications in med mal cases. That's Senate Bill 892 was passed. Action required here. Just consult with your defense counsel regarding the implications of the change to law and any actions that may be appropriate going forward. Next, another legal issue, House Bill 2082 and its Senate companion clarifies existing rules pertaining to Medicaid provider appeals. Essentially, this opens up or expands the ability to appeal to providers both overpayment and underpayment matters, and also specifies that in those appeals where it's involving a contractor, essentially a Medicaid MCO, they're required to represent themselves in those appeals as opposed to DMAS staff attorneys. So just some changes to the rules around appeals. Overall, relatively good news for providers in the sense that it gives them some expanded leeway to appeal overpayments and underpayments. And then last, just going to round out with one more slide here on legislation, and that is, if you could go, there we go. There are two things we just wanted to flag for you. This is legislation pending governor's actions. One is a legal issue regarding vicarious liability. House Bill 1730 and its Senate companion provides that in an action for personal injury or death by wrongful act brought by a vulnerable victim against an employee, that the employer is vicariously liable. Currently, this is a common law test. This bill, which we did not support, seeks to codify and modify that common law rule test for vicarious liability. We were opposed to the bill. The governor made several favorable changes to the law, but those were rejected by the General Assembly. So now it is up to him to decide whether or not he wants to let that pass or veto it. He'll have until May 2nd to take action on that. Also, this medical debt bill here, House Bill 1725, creates the Medical Debt Protection Act, really just places some additional limitations on provider medical debt collection practices. We did work with the patron on this to modify it to get in a form that we were amenable to. Again, the governor had a couple of changes to it, which were favorable, but they again were rejected by the General Assembly. So again, back to the governor to decide whether or not to veto. So stay tuned on those two, but we did want to flag those since they are pretty substantive pieces of legislation that we may be seeing again next year. So with that, Julie, I will stop talking and turn it over to you to address the budget.
Thank you so much, and great job, Brent. I will say on that last slide, and we don't have to go back to it, but Brent, this is one thing that Brent and I talk a lot about is that we know we're going to continue to see, from the legal perspective, many pieces of legislation. We have a lot of trial lawyers on both sides of the aisle in Virginia now, so we do anticipate that we're going to continue to see legislation like vicarious liability. There was another piece of legislation that did not go anywhere this year. But just kind of as a heads up, just to let you know that we know that we're going to continue to see this type of legislation. So have that on your radar, and let us know if you've got any resources to share. We would be more than interested in chatting with you about those, and perhaps those of you that are in other states, if you're seeing trends, we'd be happy to hear from you. So moving on to the budget, we are halfway through the biennial budget cycle. In this session, only amendments to the biennial budget were considered. The updated budget, as passed by the General Assembly, provides $1.1 billion in tax relief. This is including tax rebates that will come later this fall, $200 for individuals, $400 for joint filers. It also increases the standard deduction to $8,750 of individual income and $17,500 for joint filers for tax years 25 and 26. It also increases the earned income tax credit to 20% of federal credit, supporting lower income residents. The governor made a lot of amendments, in fact, 205 of them to the budget. The General Assembly accepted roughly 41 and rejected the rest, which is remaining about 164. So next slide, please. On Medicaid, there was they don't really call it a hole, but a unanticipated revenue shortage of $632.2 million. The General Assembly did fully fund Medicaid, the Medicaid forecast. There was also language that directs DMAS to establish objective performance measures for acute care hospitals receiving the enhanced private acute care hospital payments, so supplemental payments. These measures will evaluate service improvements for Medicaid members, ensuring network adequacy and enhanced behavioral health coordination, and then really specifically getting at participation in the psychiatric bed registry. And we have not seen language around this yet. We will work with DMAS to try to figure out what they're going to come up with to try to comply with this. But this is one that is a work in progress. There is a report due on what DMAS has come up with in November. And then finally, the trigger language related to Medicaid expansion remained unchanged in the budget. This is something that we supported. We did not support any changes to the trigger because we felt like that would put us in a worse position with the federal government, because we know there's a lot of talk right now in DC about Medicaid, particularly out of the Energy and Commerce Committee. We felt like we needed this trigger to stay in place, so we didn't want to give them an out. So we're thankful that the trigger language did remain in our budget. Next slide, please. Looking at workforce, the governor's initial budget had an increase for graduate medical education slots to 150,000 per slot per year for psychiatric and OBGYN specialties. That remained. So we're thankful for that. We would certainly like to get up to 150 or more, the national average being 180,000 per slot. We would like to get it up to the national average for all specialties, not just those two, but it's a good start. The budget also allocates $25 million in 25 to launch an early childhood public-private partnership pilot with private employers. This one, however, the governor actually removed this when he made his amendments. The General Assembly rejected that. So we are waiting to see if the governor will make further action or whether or not this will remain. But we do think this is very important for our workforce, and the pilot would go a long way into helping us and helping our employees be able to afford childcare. The budget also includes $100,000 in fiscal year 26 to increase funding for nurse preceptor incentive programs. This, of course, is aiming to increase the number of registered nurse clinical education opportunities for anesthesiologists. Next slide, please. All right, and this is the big one. Supplemental payment changes to the criteria and the formula really on how supplemental payments are allocated, or really the formula for which the payment would be made. We wanted to include all net patient revenue. The General Assembly went along with that and put that in the budget. It is language only, and we think this revision would strengthen our financial support for hospitals through rate improvements. We would have a bigger piece of the pie. Right now, we are only allowed up to 6% to tax ourselves. And this wouldn't change that, but it would make the pie larger. So this is really important, especially in the context of what's happening in DC. If changes are made in Washington that we're hearing, which is moving the tax from 6% to 5%, and if this language were to not go through, that would be a double hit to our members, and that would be highly problematic to the tune of over $800 million a year. So we have met with the governor. He removed this language when he sent down his amendments, and we're asking him not to line item veto this, but to keep it in the budget that we're hoping he will sign. We were hoping this week. We had heard rumors that he was going to sign the budget, not veto it. So we're hoping that this will remain in there and that there's not a line item veto. So next slide, please. So as far as the next steps, so where we are in the budget process, the General Assembly completed their actions. The governor had 30 days to act, whether he wanted to sign the budget as it was passed, veto the budget, or line item veto. And unfortunately, the supplemental payment provision that we had in there, we do think is one area that he could line item veto. The Speaker of the House would still have to recognize that veto. So there are a few more maneuvers that could happen after the governor were to, if he were to line item veto, but we're thinking positively that he will not, and whether that, we hope that's not just wishful thinking, but we're hoping that he will sign the budget and leave in that provision. Any of these paths that the governor chooses, certainly if he vetoes or line item vetoes, have significant implications for us for policy priorities and funding allocations across the Commonwealth, certainly for workforce and many others. So next slide here. So moving on to our elections, as I noted earlier, we do have all 100 seats in the House of Delegates are up for re-election. Virginia never gets a break from elections, whether that's good or bad. Early voting starts this Friday for the primary. There is no primaries currently on the Republican side for statewide offices, but there is certainly on the Democratic side, and I'm going to briefly touch on that. Primary election day is June 17th, and then early voting for the general election begins September 19th. So get ready. We used to have a little bit of time that the mailboxes wouldn't be overflowing, but boy, after the kids go back to school, so starting September 19th is when that get out the vote will be starting. And then the general election will occur on November 4th. Next slide. So looking at what we have in store for us from our statewide perspective, this year is a governor's race. And this is coming down to Abigail Spanberger, former Congresswoman, and then Winsome Sears, who is the current Lieutenant Governor on the Republican side. There were several folks that attempted to make the ballot, but did not ultimately make the ballot. So those are our two candidates for governor. Next slide. Looking at the lieutenant governor race, this one has had some drama, and certainly this week we've seen some drama on the Republican side, but there is a very large field on the Democratic side for lieutenant governor. We've got some state senators that are running: Ghazala Hashmi, Senator Aaron Rouse, and then LeVar Stoney, who's a well-known name. He was the Richmond city mayor for a long time, and is certainly served in the McAuliffe administration, so again, well-known. some lesser known folks, but certainly making it interesting. Dr. Barber Latif out of Prince William County. He is a physician, and there's been a lot of fireworks in this lieutenant governor's race so far. So we we think we have the nominee on the Republican side. That's John Reed, after Pat Harity unfortunately had to drop out of the race due to health reasons. And then John Curran, who was thinking about mounting a race, did not make the ballot. So the LG's race is still in flux. So on the Attorney General side, we do know where we are on there. On the Republican side, it is current Attorney General J.C. Miyares, the Republican candidate. On the Democratic side, there is a primary between Jay Jones, who's a former House of Delegates member, and then Shannon Taylor, who is the current Commonwealth's attorney in Henrico County. So that one, again, the Democrats have a primary on both their lieutenant governor as well as their AG. The Republican field, as of right now, is set. So next slide. Looking at the House of Delegates races, there are a number of Republican seats that are certainly on the bubble, or at least from the Democratic side, feel like they've got a good shot at. And most of this is because of the most recent election. Vice President Harris won most of these districts, so Democrats are feeling very encouraged about these districts. That some of them were narrowly won by the current Republican incumbent 2 years ago. So there are 7 that they are targeting. There's quite a little bit, a few more, actually, probably up to 10 that the House Democrats are targeting that are currently held by Republicans. But here's the list so far. The ones that we know are definitely, at least by the numbers, which doesn't always hold true, but as far as looking at the districts and looking at the turnout and numbers and historic numbers, it looks like these are the most in danger. On the Democratic side, which is on our next slide, there are 3 seats that Republicans feel like they may be in a position to take, and that is one in Virginia Beach, one in Fredericksburg, and one in Prince William. So these 10 are certainly pivotal in determining the balance of power for Virginia House of Delegates. Currently, the House is 52-48, a Democratic control. The Democrats feel very good about getting up to 55 seats. And Republicans are just trying to hang on to what they've got and not lose any more. They too hope that that maybe 1 or 2 of these that they might be able to get in November. But as we know, federal politics play, because we are so close to DC, federal politics do come into play. And historically, the party that is in power in the White House, usually with one exception back in 2013 when McAuliffe won, usually goes the opposite side. So if you're the Democrats, you're feeling pretty good and you're hoping history will prevail. If you're Republicans, you're hoping to buck that trend. So we'll see what happens as we get closer. But we do know, the one thing that we know, is going to be a lot of money that's going to enter the state. We've seen just in the last few years, the just enormous amount of national presence that have continued to play in Virginia. And we certainly know that that will happen again this year. So I think that one more slide here. Yeah, save the date. We do have a number of upcoming events that we'd like to draw to your attention. We've got a workforce summit, and that is on May 13th. We've got our behavioral health summit happening in September, and then finally our fall conference in November back at the homestead. And our emails are there, and we're happy to, if there's any questions in the chat, Tori, I'll turn to you to see if we have any questions in the chat. Doesn't appear that we do. Does not appear that we do. All right. Well, thank you guys so much for your time. On behalf of Brent and I and our whole association, our advocacy team, we appreciate all that you do for us and you help us during session, and certainly your government relations teams. We couldn't do it without them, so thank you very much. Again, there are our emails. If you'd like to email Brent and I, we will follow up again with the slides. So you'll have those very shortly, and there will be a recording available if you would like to re-listen if we moved very quickly, and we will give you back some of your day. So thank you so much for tuning in, and we look forward to speaking with you and working with you all in the future. Thanks so much.